edition of Rob and Bob Media Watch, in which we talk about things that are happening in the media, and a lot of things like impeachment was announced today. I spelled it P-A-C-H. That's peach. I guess you leave out that A in there as impeachment. I can't remember. Anyway, nothing to do with peaches. At any rate, and other things are happening, especially in the political world, but in general, it's just all kinds of things that are happening in the media. Another one I want to talk about is the Santa Barbara News Press too. I want to talk about that too. Well, again, we get to it. At any rate, Rob, I'll let you. I have my colleague Rob, who is somewhere else. This the podcast, like they say, the one called Zoom. We're on the Zoom deal, and Rob's out there. Rob, what are we going to talk about? What's the first one?
Well, first of all, everybody's always said that I'm out there, so yeah, why not? Well, I think you were interested in talking about Stalingrad and the Stalingrad Monument. Stalingrad, of course, that's what it was called back when Stalin was riding high. It's been renamed to Volgograd since it is on the Volga.
Right, it's on the Volga.
And Grad means town or city.
Yeah, right.
So, you had some stuff to say about the monument, and then I think we'd like to.
Right.
We'll talk on about our old friend Clarence Thomas, my friend.
Put up that monument there. There you go. This is a statue. It's in the city of Stalingrad, which, by the way, is in the background there, and you can see it's totally rebuilt. Stalingrad was a battle during during the World War II. The Stalins were in it by themselves, and the Germans had invaded. The battle took place. Really started in June of when they invaded. Actually, no, it was in 1942. So that the U.S. was already in the war and supplying. Let's take that first. I always say, well, we helped Russia in the war. If it hadn't been for the United States, the Russians would have been, would have lost to the Germans. And of course, the thing of that is we supplied a lot of things, jeeps and all kinds of airplanes even, and so on. And the Russians had some pretty weaponry of themselves. The T-34 tank was the epitome. That when the Germans ran up against that tank, they didn't like it very much. But anyway,
and there were a lot of them.
They can say that we supplied a lot of stuff to the Russians, but you know what the Russians supplied? The bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And in this battle, the battle for Stalingrad, was a very it lasted about 3 or 4 months, and in fact the Germans were defeated totally. The Sixth Army under von Paulus had to surrender basically, and Hitler wouldn't let them even try to get out. They basically they lost an army of over 300,000 Germans. Had lost 300,000. 95,000 ended up being prisoners of war. There were only about 95,000 left out of the 300,000 after they had been through this winter, basically. And of those 95,000 that were actually taken prisoner, only 5,000 ever came back. And it was after the war, in fact, into the early 50s, before even those prisoners were released. Now, the reason I bring that up is because this is a Russian monument that stands out of the millions, essentially millions of people Russians that were killed in that battle. That was, like I say, the Russians had the ability to supply those bodies. Had to do with the war they were fighting with Japan at the time, and it ended so that all those troops could come and participate in the Stalingrad War. At any rate. I point this out because here's Putin, the guy that's now running in the Ukraine. It's just trading places. Putin is now the Germans invading a small country, Ukraine, the country less, and they're fighting back. And the Russians are faced with a lot of problems and so on. That, first of all, those guys, the Wagner Group, that's it. The guy that ran it was in a plane crash. Yeah, right. That's how these governments around the world exist. Like I always say, Rob, as you know, I always say that one of the other governments that are related, assassination is part of the political process. In this case, it was the same kind of thing. Where at least in this country, we don't do that yet. I can talk about something like that later on. Although we haven't had that, we've been through a lot of different things. And well, every assassination of an American president, there's only 4 of them. That's not only; it's a lot of them. Although 3 of them took place within a period of about 40 years. 1865, 1882 or something like that, and then 1896 or 900. When
1900. Is that McKinley?
McKinley was assassinated, right? And then of course was John F. Kennedy, and that. But it was always one person. It was not a conspiracy. It was not a as far as I can tell, at least, it was not a group of people that were trying to kill, trying to take over the government, as they call this a reactionary thing that happened in January 6th, the insurrection and so on. Well, again, what I'm trying to bring up the Stalingrad thing is, Putin is, can I talk to you? What's his first name again?
Vladimir,
yeah. Vladimir, when I talk to Vladimir, this ain't gonna work. It's just not gonna work. A lot of Russians are you may end up being people, you better have some pretty good bodyguards around you, because at some point, they're gonna be after you. You've been elected, of course, about your elections. I don't know how fair those are and so on. At some point and so on, you can do it. Do like the Chinese do. They buy a country. They actually buy the country, or loan them money at least, and then when the country can't pay the debt, well, that's when the Chinese come in and take over. I once had a conversation with a guy who worked at the harbor in Los Angeles. I think it was L.A. Harbor, not the Long Beach Harbor, and he was telling me that these Chinese ships show up, all the time with different things and so on. And one of them is Christmas lights. Christmas lights. They showed up with a complete one tanker was full of Christmas lights, and they sell them, of course, in the United States. You see that ad about the guy that puts all the Christmas lights on top of us, and the guys in the spacecraft up in the spaceship can see this guy's house down on the Earth. And that.
I can see your house from here.
That's what they do. That's what they're doing to the United States. In fact, they're selling us a lot of products and so on, and then using that money to, I don't know, a lot of different things by other countries, really. That's what it amounts to. I think they pay them off in T-bills, in fact. These are good. They're worth something and so on. And
I can actually relate something about this.
The Russians. The Russian people are very educated people. They have a lot of Nobel Prizes and so on, and they developed some real science over the years and so on. And this is not part of it. You have a country, and it has resources like crazy, oil and gas and coal and steel and all kinds of different things. It's still the largest country in the world too, by the way, even after they lost all the other stuff and so on. They're still the largest country in the world as far as acreage is
Land area.
Land area, that's what I wanted to say. Land area is concerned. So I just want to pass that on Vladimir, that maybe you should start not thinking about bombing the Ukraine so much and so on, because you're going to have to rebuild that whole, if you won the war, which I don't think you're going to do it, you have to rebuild that whole thing. Like the Stalingrad, you just saw the city there. That whole city was rebuilt. There was nothing left of that after the Germans bombed the crap out of it. And of course, the Russians had to rebuild it themselves because the Germans lost the war. But even if Putin were to take over the country, and by the way, he said it's not a country. Well, Ukraine, maybe it wasn't a country before he invaded it. I always like to say the Ukrainians welcomed the Nazis when they came in. There's another picture of the statue in Stalingrad. Where was I? Anyway, they
welcoming the Nazis.
Yeah, they had they didn't rebuild the place and so on. The Russians had to rebuild the whole place. Well, why don't you just, loan the Ukrainians money? Oh, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, that wasn't the country. There's been invasions through Ukraine. It's very rich in agriculture, especially, and so on. The breadbasket of the Russians, and probably the breadbasket of the world. In fact, we buy wheat from them, or different crops and so on. But what's happened is, and over the years, it's been invaded by a lot of different countries. But you know what Putin did? He made it a country. Now it is a country. Now when you're Ukrainian, and which, by the way, a Jewish guy runs the country. Keep that in mind too, which is very important, because a lot of Jews were killed by the Nazis during World War II. Baba Yar was they shot 35,000 people in one day and buried them outside of this place called Baba Yar in the Ukraine. But not today. No. Today it's a different ballgame. And they talk about people that are very educated. They are intellectuals. They're educated people. I think you're making a big mistake, a really big mistake. If you want to stop the war, loan them a couple of $1 billion or something like that. And when they can't pay it, which they probably won't, you foreclose. And you'll get the property without having to bomb the damn thing. Anyway, I just wanted to get that on. Vladimir's, hopefully you're listening. Anyway.
I wanted to mention something, since you were talking about how China likes to buy countries, and of course it does it subtly, it doesn't do it cash on the barrel hit. But we all remember the great author John Steinbeck.
Yeah.
Well, I used to drink with his son, Thomas Steinbeck, and Thomas Steinbeck was also quite a writer and a historian and a script doctor. He actually made his money doctoring scripts for Hollywood.
Yeah.
But from his studies of history and of China, he said, China never fights anyone they can buy. And
yeah, right. Exactly.
I thought, what an insight!
Not the current China, that's for sure.
Nah.
They learned that in the Korean War, I guess. Basically, they didn't win that one. Anyway.
Not really.
Yeah.
No.
Well, they've learned that lesson very well. I know a guy that I heard that this guy bought a Chinese guy bought in Newport Harbor. He owns the harbor, the commercial district in the harbor, and all the apartments there. And how did he get the money? Well, he did some business with Americans and made some junk, made some stuff. Although I think a lot of times that's not the case. I think a lot of that stuff is very well made, as a matter of fact. Anyway, that's used to say that, well, made in China, it can't, it's got to be junk and so on. Well, I got a jackhammer that I've had for 20 years and it works pretty good still. I don't use it a lot, but I have to use it. And it was cheaper well, the same hammer was $1,800 then, and I bought it for $400 at that place down in Oxnard.
I'm guessing Harbor Freight?
Harbor Freight, that's it, Harbor Freight. If you're going to buy tools, go down there. And in fact, everything in that store is made in China. Pittsburgh, they got a Pittsburgh thing, the brand, and I don't know, Cincinnati, and all kinds of different, today they're Milwaukee, and I don't know, Milwaukee. Anyway. Yeah, that's interesting. I think, like I say, that they really the Chinese got it. And we don't we think our enemy. Well, quit buying Christmas lights and get them made in America. That'll hurt them right there. You unload one of those tankers out there in the harbor, and it never gets unloaded. The guy that owns that stuff is going to be a little bit, how should I say, unhappy about having the ship go all the way back to China and it hasn't been sold because he hasn't been paid until he gets it delivered. Anyway, What else? I'll give you one.
You're going to give me one?
Yeah. Well, Clarence Thomas.
Why don't we do Clarence Thomas first?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think you wanted to roll with this anyway, but of course I'm a big Clarence Thomas fan, and I'll have some things to add about it.
Yeah.
But where are you going to go with Clarence Thomas?
Well, the bottom line is that the conservatives or the liberals or the progressives think Clarence Thomas is incompetent or he's not. Well, of course, they're after him for taking, getting on an airplane when the rich guys owns an airplane or a boat, or he had got a loan for a house, but he paid the loan. He's paying off the loan to this guy that loaned him the money to buy a house or buy whatever it was he was going to buy and so on. And of course, right off the bat, they got after him. The liberals and the progressives got after him because, that you can't do that and so on. Well, Ruth Bader Ginsburg didn't get her buy her own plane tickets and buy her own meals whenever she went out to talk, and any of the justices of the Supreme Court. Let's face it, this is a black man, who has attained the rank, one of the highest offices in this country, a justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. And he's a competent guy. Nobody criticizes necessarily his judicial knowledge and so on. They don't like his decisions, of course, in some cases, but they don't do that. And what do? They call him a racist. He's a racist. He's not as Joe Biden said. What was it? He said, if you don't vote Democratic, you're not black. If you're a black man and don't vote Democratic, you're not black. Well, this guy doesn't vote Democratic, and so on. It's racist. But like I say, the progressives and the thing will say right off the bat, well, it's different. What he's doing is different than other black. No, the only difference is he's a Republican, a conservative, and you're progressive. That's the difference. How do they get off doing that stuff?
Okay,
At that moment, everything is racist when they want it to be racist. Put it that way.
But what the so-called progressive mantra seems to be is, well, it's good when we do it. And I think this is where I am in things like what racism is. I think that if you treat someone badly because of their race and not because of what they've done, then you're racist. And whatever color you are, whatever color they are, if you treat a person badly or you are unfair to them over their race, that's racism. What else could it be?
In fact, if you got that video of what Clarence Thomas said at his hearings when he was approved by the Senate, why don't you play that, Mike? You have that? Okay. This is when he was accused of all kinds of different things and so on.
When it came time for him to publicly respond to the allegations, Thomas turned the tables on his interrogators and, for all intents and purposes, ended the debate.
This is a circus. It's a national disgrace. It is a high-tech lynching for uppity blacks who in any way deign to think for themselves. And it is a message that unless you kowtow to an old order, you will be lynched, destroyed, caricatured by a committee of the U.S. Senate rather than hung from a tree.
That's what he said. This is, a long time ago. By the way, you saw a picture of Biden there. He was one of the members of the Judiciary Committee of the Senate that had to do with approving his nomination and putting him on the Supreme Court. And they did eventually. In fact, I think it was kind of a narrow vote, as I recall. I'm not sure if I guess the Democrats did control the Senate even in those days and so on, but they did approve of him and so on. But it was only by 1 or 2 votes and so on. In fact, the senator from Illinois, I think, was one of the chief ones, and he did vote for him to be on the bench. And he lost his seat. The very next election, he lost his seat. He didn't get it.
Well,
okay, it's your turn.
Sure. First of all, let's talk a little bit about Clarence Thomas. God bless him.
Sure.
See, Clarence Thomas was nominated by George H.W. Bush. That would have had to be back in either like 89 or 90 or 91, somewhere around there. And that's when he was nominated, that's when he was confirmed. Now, at the time, first of all, he was being nominated for a seat that had been vacated by Thurgood Marshall. So at least Democrats wanted to say that that was a black seat and needed to have a black man or a black woman
Right.
Nominated to it.
And they got
So,
one. It just
and they got
wasn't,
one.
yeah, it wasn't the same. They just not exactly what they wanted.
Just so, and so people were saying, well, George H.W. Bush didn't know what he was doing. He was just grabbing some black man to throw in the slot, that he wasn't the best for the job. And so at the time, I didn't know much about Clarence Thomas, although I had followed a little bit of his career. But the more I read about him, the more I realized that he was a solid constitutionalist and quite a scholar in just the way I might have hoped.
Right.
So I've been overall pretty happy with Clarence Thomas. I wanted to mention somebody who was not happy with him, somebody else besides Joe Biden who tried to make sure he didn't serve, and that was the Lion of the Senate, Ted Kennedy, the guy who drowned a girl and lied about it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ted Kennedy, I was watching the hearings, and he started waving a book, and I looked, and my eyes almost bugged out. I thought, I've read that book. It was a book called Takings by Richard Epstein, and it was a scholarly discussion of the takings clause of the Fifth Amendment. It's about how much of your property the government can take, when it has to pay for it, that sort of thing. And it described the takings clause as an important limiting factor. Mm-hmm. I loved the book, and if nothing else, somebody wanted to argue with it, they would at least have to address the arguments. Anyway, Ted Kennedy seemed very upset that Clarence Thomas read the book and might have taken its arguments seriously. And that's when I knew that Clarence Thomas was the justice for me. So I got a big laugh out of it, and I still do occasionally.
Did Ted Kennedy even read the book? He was a lawyer, I guess. They gave him a law degree out of a Cracker Jack box or something.
I don't know if he read it, but I'm sure that at least his staff told him that he should be upset.
Yeah, right. There you go. That's right. I wonder what. I don't. The only Epstein I know was the most recent one, the guy that committed suicide, supposedly committed suicide in the jail cell. Bill Clinton.
Yeah, the most high-profile prisoner, the most high-profile prisoner we had at the time. Yeah. And the guards are asleep. The video isn't working, and he hangs himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be true. It just stinks.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that was a Clinton deal, wasn't it, basically?
Let's see.
No, we don't know that for sure.
I couldn't tell. I mean, look, Trump was president at the time, but I don't think that Trump did it.
Yeah. Anyway, I've been talking too much here. What else have you got in your mind?
All righty, well, let's see. Since I've just mouthed the word Trump, I'd love to go to the picture. Yeah, exactly. Michael's right on top of this. Here's Donald Trump, of course, was forced to come in for a mug shot.
Is that the mug shot? Is that the actual mug shot?
That's the mug shot. And of course, and you gotta love that.
Oh, man.
Isn't that a mug shot? I take the best mug shots.
Yeah.
So the great thing about this picture can be used by the Democrats and the Republicans in order to raise money, because the Democrats are saying, "Oh, look, indicted again," and and by the way, this reminds me of teenage girls in high school where someone is guilty because they've been accused. Gosh, I don't suppose anyone has ever been falsely accused, do you? Like by somebody, let's say, who hated them. Well, that's kind of how it looks to me, and I realize that other people will disagree, and they may have a point.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Democrats will like it because they can show mugshot of an impeached guy. The Republicans freaking love it because we think it shows that he's being unjustly persecuted, and I appreciate it for that. And I think it was Atlantic magazine actually had something to say about the mugshot. They said it was supposed to shame him, but he's taken it very aggressively. I thought, it's a mugshot. You asked for it, you got it.
Yeah, there it is, right.
Be careful what you asked for.
He's supposed to look like it's shaming. I don't even see that. I see people smiling in mugshots and so on, so on, so on. Yeah, right. I didn't believe it when I heard it. I kept seeing this thing on people, and I finally realized, they're showing the actual mugshot of this guy. This is going to be used, basically. It'll be a T-shirt. I think there is a T-shirt with this picture on it already.
There are several.
Yeah,
there are several.
Already.
One of them has him. One of them has him against the background of you know, the height numbers so you can tell how tall he is. But underneath it says, "Wanted for President 2024." Well, I'll wear that one.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, that's it. You know, that's an amazing thing, really. I think he's still not much of a speaker. I don't think. I watched him a speech last night. He was giving someone up in South Dakota. He made some points and so on, but he doesn't really follow a script. You know, it sort of was sort of off the top of his head. He has no what do you call those things where they roll it in front of you?
Teleprompter.
Yeah. He didn't have one of those. He just keeps talking basically. But I think here's my thing up on that Donald Trump. In 2016 when he was elected, he had never been elected to nothing. He didn't know politicians. He didn't know nothing about Washington D.C. He hired a bunch of generals and things that Flynn and a few other people and so on. That really shouldn't have been in the combat. Now he's been at it now for this will make it 8 years. President for 4 of those years. He has a pretty good. I think he has a lot more experience now as a politician about who he can hire and who he can talk to and so on. Like Truman did basically when he got to be president. He was the vice president and then he was FDR died, and so he had to get to know all these people. And what was it? Lyndon Johnson said about when John F. Kennedy was assassinated, and all these guys were in the cabinet, and somebody said, "Oh, that was the Speaker of the House." About you have, how was it? Do you have what he said exactly? I can't remember.
Was it the best and the brightest?
Yeah, the best and the brightest. Right. Yeah, but he said Johnson said something. I won't say it derogatorily, but he certainly was. He had a lot of people that were, Harvard professors and things like that, and he graduated from a teachers' college in Texas when he went to college.
Wasn't it Senator Sam who said, "What bothers me about this is that not one of them has ever, stood for county sheriff."
That's it. That's what I want to say. Right. That was
not one of them been elected to anything.
Yeah, not elected. That elected county dog catcher or something. Didn't he say that way? And never stood for election. That's what it was. Never actually stood for election.
Stood for election.
Which of course was true.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay. Let's. I think we probably have at least a little amusement value to go around here. But let's. Yeah, there's my man.
Yeah, there you go.
Look, I'm from New Jersey. And I'm glad to be from it and not in it, but I don't know what's up with Chris Christie. Chris Christie became interesting in the Republican Party when he got elected as a Republican governor in a Democrat state,
right,
and was doing reasonably well in governing the state. So people thought, well, there's a guy who maybe could appeal to Democrats as well as Republicans.
Yeah,
but the more he's at it, especially the more he doesn't win, the meaner he seems to get. I think that, look, he wants to win, and I get that, but as far as I'm concerned, most Republicans would like to have Trump, or at least have Trump given a fair shake, and this guy feels like a backstabber. So, not feeling him.
Yeah.
And he does retain bullshit.
Well, he's not going to get, he's not going anywhere pretty much, and so on.
Exactly. If he's not going to get the nomination, and he knows that, and we know that, then what is he doing?
Well, it's good. He gets on a lot of TV shows and so on. And running for elections gives you real exposure. A lot of the people that are running besides him, running for president against Donald Trump, I think are basically. Trying to get maybe the vice presidency. Nikki Haley has been mentioned in that regard. She was a governor of the state of South Carolina, and she was also an ambassador in the UN, so she was up against some pretty high-powered, guys and so on. She knows what she was doing, and I've seen her now talking and all that, and she seems like a pretty valuable. She wouldn't be a bad vice president, put it that way. Certainly better than Kamala Harris, that's for sure.
Well, I'll take her over any of the likely Democrat nominees, but so far. But she's all right. I guess.
Yeah. Well, and there's several other ones too that that qualify. There have been governors. The governor of South Dakota is running, and some other. And
Would that be Kristi Noem?
And DeSantis, and the black guy who's a congressman from Florida. No, I'm sorry, he's a senator from the state of South Carolina. He seems
Tim Scott.
Yeah, Tim Scott. He seems like a pretty nice, pretty good guy too. He's just got a reelected senator from the state, in fact, even of South Carolina.
Right.
It's a southern state. One of the black senators said that there's two black senators on the Democratic side. The guy from Maryland, I guess it is, or is it New Jersey, and the guy then, of course, from Georgia. There's the only two black senators. And there are three of them, and one of them is that Republican, Tim Scott. And he seems like what could be a very well. In fact, I've even read it that he could easily be nominated for vice president.
If you go to YouTube
for Trump, if Trump were to win, that would gain him the votes, I suppose.
If you go to YouTube and watch his videos, I think he seems at least pretty solid.
Yeah.
There's something about Trump's vice president. I'm not sure who he should have right now. Obviously, Mike Pence is a non-starter. I mean, that guy has proven to be.
He's had that job. He's not going to get it again. He wants the presidency this time. But he talks like a politician. Pence is just he never gives you a straight answer. Yes or no and stuff like that. I don't know. And it's a good. You ask why is Christie running? Well, it gives him airtime. He's one of the debaters, and people can see him. So he's applying for a job, pretty much. That's what.
Okay, so you're thinking exposure.
Yeah,
that's what he wants and needs.
That's right. That's
okay.
What I think.
That's a possibility.
Yeah.
Let's see.
To flatten the curve.
That's actually an amuse. Remember what we heard even during the Trump years, of course, when they were just kicking off the pandemic campaign. It was 3 weeks to flatten the curve. And I'm so freaking naive. I thought they might have meant it. That's how naive I am.
Yeah. This is the curve, the flattening the curve basically of the people COVID.
For COVID, right.
Yeah,
but as it turns out, they never meant it.
Yeah.
They always meant to make that the biggest darn lockdown and biggest shutdown of America they could possibly make. And that's what we got.
Yeah.
Anyway, that and of course so there's 4 more years to flatten the curve is that appealed to me because I wouldn't put it past Biden to use that one, except it's just been run out. Oh, you said something about Trump going on, and I wanted to contrast it with, Biden runs through his teleprompter lines and maybe even reads the parts that aren't supposed to be read, and because he doesn't seem to recognize the difference between these are your lines and these are instructions.
Yeah.
So the thing is, Trump, for whatever else is going on, and he doesn't have the most beautiful way of talking, but he can ad lib and talk about stuff and keep people interested for an hour and a half. And maybe he has some notes like, it looks down and he says, oil, imports. It's like there's probably 3 words on his sheet of paper, and he talks extemporaneously because he's saying what he means and what he wants people to understand about what he's doing. So that ain't so bad. And by the way, even though I know sometimes I look and I say, that's not the most sophisticated presentation. Well, Scott Adams, who understands persuasion real well, he says, actually, the persuasion techniques are excellent.
Well, obviously he did. I think he struck a nerve. That's what I think what really happened. I think he was surprised that I heard when he announced that he was going to run for president in 2016 and so on. He hired all those people that are around him. They were actors, supposedly. That's what I heard anyway. And he was, he went for office. But in the very first get the, what do you call it, the get together there and so on, the rally that he had and so on. What, 35,000 people showed up and that. I think that surprised Don. He said, "Wait a minute, what have I created here?" And that it kept, and even today it just keeps on going. He struck a nerve. He really did strike a nerve with people, and still does, for that matter.
Newt Gingrich had something to say about the concept of Trump running that first time. Trump was basically looking at the state of the country and how much people were enjoying or not the various machinations of Obama and the economy and so on. And he said, "Yeah, I could run against that."
Right.
If somebody is messing up and you want to run against them, let them. You never interfere with an enemy when they're making a mistake.
Yeah, right. Here it is.
Yes. Kamala Harris is like this. The concept is
hospitalized after getting stuck in a strange loop. What the hell? I don't know.
In a sentence loop, because she'll say things like, these are the kinds of times that make you examine the times, you examine the times. And she really sounds like a low IQ beauty pageant
doesn't make any sense, basically.
She seems to get lost, or she'll be saying one thing and then she thinks of a platitude to throw in there, and then she laughs at her platitude and she kind of forgets about things for a while and eventually gets brought back. It's a strange speaking style. I used to think that it was affected, that she was just putting this on. I'm starting to think that that's her.
People have to wonder, if she's going to be the nominee for the vice president. Joe Biden would not just get her off the ballot. Get a new vice presidential thing. And of course, let's face it, Biden is an old man, and younger than me, by the way, and he's had some problems. I found out, the fact is, I was reading something and so on, that he actually has AFib. He has a heart problem.
Yeah, he's also had aneurysms.
And has some problems and so on. And when he walks around now, he makes speeches. Like the other day, "I want to go to bed." He was in Hanoi or someplace. "I want to go to bed," stuff like that and so on. And then the press secretary just got in. It's over. That news conference is over. Boom. And then they had to lead it. Then they had to find his way off stage, basically, and so on. He's an old guy, and this could happen.
I'm starting to see this as elder abuse. That Joe Biden is trotted out like this. The Democrat Party, whether I agree with them or not, is loaded with highly intelligent, very energetic people, all of whom could do the job of the presidency far better than this poor guy.
Yeah, right.
And so thinking about Kamala Harris or whoever the vice president is, on any given day, from yesterday through all of the future, would it shock you if someone told you, due to health reasons, Biden has decided to step down?
Step down, right? Yeah. As president.
When would that surprise you?
Yeah. Well, that's it may not even be that. Like I tell people all the time, 1/3 of the people that that have a heart problem find out the hard way. They die. And he, of course, has a heart problem and so on. And let's face it, that it takes you want to think of all the justices for everybody. Well, the same as with health and so on. Anybody can die of a heart attack. I have AFib myself. I have the same kind of problem, and it worries me. You go to bed at night, you wonder if you're going to wake up in the morning. That's what you do, And I say I'm older than him, and anyway.
Yes, we have a new COVID strain coming. We hear, and they're urging us. They're advising us to mask up again, and I just love this concept. Of course, this is tongue-in-cheek, and Cantaloupe News is a tongue-in-cheek bunch. That's CDC urges politicians to wear masks when cameras are running.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, I don't see that as being a big deal. Quite honestly, I don't think that's going to happen.
Right.
And vaccinations, and getting another shot and so on, a supplemental shot, whatever they call it.
Booster.
Yeah, that's kind of weird too. Anyway, we can talk more about the election, but I guess we should maybe talk about the impeachment. It's been announced,
by all means, let's talk.
announced today.
That's an impeachment inquiry. It isn't a vote yet. It's an inquiry.
McCarthy is going to an
McCarthy,
investigation,
yes.
and not automatically going to do it, but he's going to investigate. And he has 3 committees. Jim Jordan is one of them. Comer is the head of another one, and I forgot the other guy's name. House committees who are going to be doing this investigation and so on. And quite honestly, I think it's, they always talk about, well, they don't really have any evidence against him.
Excuse me?
They have that laptop, and that's all they need.
Well, while we're at it, I've been hearing people saying, and I've been seeing it on, all over the various news channels, and when they say they don't have evidence, I'm looking at that, we actually have the bank statements for all these Biden family members and the huge deposits being made by Chinese concerns and Ukrainian concerns.
Yeah.
The millions flow in. Biden family members collect usually through a set of front organizations, so that it's not as easy to tell. That's also known as money laundering.
Yeah.
And why do people money launder? So you don't know.
Yeah.
Why don't they want you to know? Because they wouldn't look good, right?
And
so
they say they have
we
no
that
evidence,
stuff.
actual evidence of him. But like they found that one congressman down in Louisiana, the money he kept, the money that he got, $95,000 in the refrigerator, and they knew that was the money. They were after him, so this is the money that he got for that. They would have had serial numbers on the bill and so on and so forth.
Right.
That kind of thing and so on. They just about got that. I'll tell you that right now. A lot of things and so on. And quite honestly, it may not even be impeachment that he's at. Maybe he could be indicted for certain things that he did as a citizen. They keep like to say about Donald Trump, no man is above the law. Neither is the sitting president of the United States. If you have done something illegal, you're liable. You could be serving. That's why I tell people that this may be the first time in American history where both candidates are in jail. By the time one of them has been voted vice president, or been voted as the president of the United States, and the other one is just there for just in case, I guess. Both of them are going to be indicted. So, and we'll just have to wait and see. But the impeachment won't happen. They always like to tell Richard Nixon he was impeached. No, he wasn't. The Senate, the House never actually voted for impeachment. I always like to say he was statesman enough. Richard Nixon was statesman enough to resign the office before he went to go through that. Because quite honestly, I think that impeachment would be a very tough road to hoe to do it. Because you need 67 votes. Even in Nixon's time, they only had, I think, 52 or something like that, 54, 56 Republicans in the Senate who would vote, well, hopefully not for conviction and so on. And never, of course, they never got that far and so on. But they needed 67. So they needed some of those Republicans to vote for it, and I think I counted it up. They needed 12 Republican senators to vote to convict Richard Nixon of the impeachment charges and so on. Well, they never got that far. And in fact, there's a good example of it, of course, in 1865 or 1866 when they went after Andrew Johnson and so on, when Republicans really did have a huge majority in the Senate. They didn't even have any Democrats. Very few, because the rebel states, the Confederate states, had not were not back into the Senate, and they still could not convict Andrew Johnson, who in fact was not a Republican. He was a Democrat, When Lincoln ran in 1964, he didn't run as a Republican. He ran for the Union Party, which was the Republicans and those Democrats who believed in the Union and were in the North, in the northern states, in the Union states, and so on. And of course, Lincoln was reelected in 1864, but he picked Andrew Johnson as his running mate, as a vice president, for various reasons I'm not going to get into, and so on. But the bottom line is, he was the only sitting senator. He was a sitting senator from the state of Tennessee, and he's the only sitting senator in the southern states. And there was a lot of senators, of course, that decided not to go with the Confederacy. He was a Union man, and in fact, when the Union by 1864, the armies had retaken Tennessee and Louisiana, and Tennessee. He was made the military governor of the state of Tennessee, and he had been the governor of the state of Tennessee, in fact, as a Democrat. But he was nominated then but of course they tried to impeach him, and it didn't work. And it's never going to work. You're never going to. There have been very few impeachments even. Most of our federal judges who have been impeached and convicted of a time. There was a guy, a black guy in Florida.
Are we talking about Alcee Hastings?
Yeah, Hastings, right, who was in fact a federal judge, and he was impeached and convicted of the charges. And he ran for Congress, and he served. I don't know if he's still serving in Congress.
I think he may still be serving.
Serving from the state of Florida. So it didn't seem to do him any harm, and so on. And he was caught red-handed, and so on and so forth. But the bottom line is the fact that he was black had really nothing to do with it, other than nothing, basically. All of the convictions basically were federal judges. Basically, there was a few other low-lying appointees in some of the places and so on. I think there's only 21 actual impeachments, and then something like that, and only 9 or 10 of those were actually convictions, and almost all of those were federal judges.
All right, so let's address the impeachment thing.
Okay.
Joe Biden richly deserves impeachment, but as you say, he clearly will not be removed by the Senate. So, and you mentioned that we have impeachment investigation committees in the House, and of course, just in case anybody doesn't know, we'll just mention that the reason that those committees are all in the House is that articles of impeachment are required to originate in the House.
In the House, right.
So,
yeah, right.
That's where it would have to come, and that's the House elects to impeach, or if they choose to.
Yeah.
But it's the Senate that tries and issues a verdict and removes.
Yeah.
So far, they never have. Or not for a president.
And Bill Clinton was impeached for a little hanky-panky in the round office. What do you call it? The Oval Office, and so on and so forth. Actually, it didn't happen there. It happened in a little side room of the Oval Office, and so on. And they impeached him.
I tend to think that it was because he committed perjury when he testified about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that
perjury is actually, a lot of people have gone to jail for perjury. So. Okay, they didn't remove him, and they didn't go to jail for it. All right, I got nothing to do to change the past.
Yeah.
But lots of people wound up in jail for perjury, and lots of people were in jail for perjury at the time that Clinton committed it.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Be that as it may, it's a different world.
Yeah, but they were, after him, and the ultimate thing was, because he did part of the deal. Of course, maybe they meant not to use that as a charge, but basically. And he'd had a little hanky-panky there in the Oval Office, and he didn't tell Hillary about that till later on, till he came up with the purple dress or the black dress, whatever it was.
Blue.
I wonder if that's in the Clinton Museum that they have down in Arkansas.
I don't know where it is, but I know that some collector has it.
Somewhere somebody has it, right? And then of course with Donald Trump and so on, he made one phone call to the guy and say, take care of this, something like that, whatever.
You say, I'd like you to make sure that we get rid of the corruption.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
And so supposedly this was interfering with a future election because Joe Biden was a possible candidate. So if that's interference, then I don't know what the heck it is supposed to be when Biden as vice president was actually in Ukraine doing a quid pro quo to get rid of a prosecutor that his son's company Burisma wanted out.
Yeah.
He literally told him, "Look, you ain't getting the loan guarantee unless you ditch that prosecutor."
Yeah. Well, that's
so,
right.
Literally corruption.
That kind of was the beginning of what Biden, that's what he's been up against now. As president, perhaps he's not been had this money thing going on all the time, but certainly while he was vice president, and even after that, he, Hunter. I guess I've said this before. I really kind of feel sorry for Joe. He had lost his wife and his daughter in a car crash. He wasn't in the car. The two sons, Bo and Hunter, were in the car. They lived through it pretty much, but the wife and the daughter were killed. And then Bo ended up dying of
some kind of cancer.
Yeah, I've forgotten exactly what it was. Maybe it wasn't even cancer even. Anyway, he died. He was a nice guy. He was a very guy. And here's poor Joe, ends up with Hunter.
Yeah, only the good die young.
Didn't see a dollar he didn't want, or something like that. Didn't see a deal that he couldn't take care of. The big guy is behind me. He's listening on the phone on this deal and so on. That was ridiculous.
Yeah. So because we're getting short of time, I'd like to hit a couple of videos that we have.
Let's do them.
I'm thinking of the videos 110 and 111 mostly because we're starting to get a little traction about Obama being gay. Now, I don't know if he is or he isn't, and I frankly don't care. But I'll have my question after we see these is, well, I'll tell you what the question is. It's why am I hearing about it now?
Yeah, right. And who cares?
Who's bringing that up?
Who cares? Right.
And I have my suspect. My suspect is the Clintons because I don't think they want Michelle to be the.
Here it is.
Michael and I also want to acknowledge.
Okay, that was because
Michael
people who, it's because he's saying Michael and I rather than Michelle and I, and people have been asserting for a while that Michelle was originally Michael, and in fact there are all sorts of great pictures of Michelle dancing where there's a suspicious bulge in the breast.
Aren't those the two women that were always on Fox News? Oh, I'm sorry.
Louder.
Like a new cottage career move for you?
I'm so excited.
Good.
And I should do very well because I don't charge.
And do you think that the country will see the United States will see the first gay president or the first
Well,
woman
we already
president?
have it with Obama, so let's just calm down.
Got it.
You know Michelle is a trans. We all know.
I'm sorry, she's a what?
A transgender. We all know.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, gosh. It's okay.
So that was, we all know, she had just officiated at some gay wedding.
Who is that? Who is that woman?
That's Joan Rivers.
Oh, really? Okay, Joan Rivers.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So she had just officiated at a gay wedding, and someone said, "Well, do you think we'll see the first gay president?" And she said, "Obama." And anyway, I'm not testifying to any facts because I sure don't know any. But I'm just amused by it. I'm saying if this stuff is floating around right now, somebody wants to hurt something, and I would say the Clintons don't like the Obamas. And if Michelle is floating the idea that she should run for president, I could see the Clintons wanting to say, "Yeah, let's get rid of that." So don't know. Again, I don't know anything. I'm not accusing anybody of anything because I'm so ignorant.
Yeah.
But it's just the way it looks.
In politics, there's no rules. That's for sure, right?
It ain't being bad.
Who was the other? Brings up two subjects, in fact. Who was the only president that actually was accused of being gay? That they had some doubts about.
Cal Coolidge?
No, James Buchanan,
Really?
elected in 1856. Yes, and he got a he was elected in 1856, and he got as his running mate, as the president, his lover, I guess, who was a senator from Alabama. And so he made sure that this guy was with him and so on. And of course, they accused the head of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover. He was supposedly dressed up in dresses and things like that and so on. Who cares?
Okay. So lastly,
Yeah.
I'd love to throw in something about climate change. So if Michael could do number 401, which is about cooling rather than
Okay.
heating, I'd love to see that, if he can squeeze it in.
Okay, go ahead. Mike, you got it? 401.
Yeah, and boost the sound.
Here it is.
No, I'm looking for a video. But that was good. I like that. Because we always need something to distract people. If it isn't COVID, it has to be climate change.
You got it, Mike? 401, here it is.
We have been cooling down for the last 4,000 years.
Yeah, as
So
loud as you
people say,
can.
oh, the planet's warming. Well, it's all about when you start the measurements. If we look at the last 38 years, there has been no change in temperature. If we look in the last 150 years, we've had 3 warming periods and 3 cooling periods with a total warmth of about 0.6 degrees Celsius. Now, I wonder why it warms. I mean, 1850, now what happened then? Oh yes, that was the end of the Little Ice Age. Do you think it's going to warm or cool after a Little Ice Age? Of course it's going to warm. So if you start taking measurements from 1850 and the Industrial Revolution, we have been warming. If you take measurements from the medieval warming, we've been cooling. We've cooled about 5 degrees since then. If you take measurements from the Roman warming, we've cooled about 5 degrees. So as soon as someone tells you, oh, it's warming, the reply you give is, since when? We have been cooling down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept. That a lot of people. There's a great book you got to look at. It's called "How to Lie with Statistics," and part of it is about where you start. You say, or how you adjust the scale so that you can exaggerate the scale, you can minimize the scale.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's quite a few chapters in How to Lie with Statistics. It's an absolute classic. Everyone who plans to read any statistics should read that book.
Yeah. Okay, we're down to less than a minute here and so on. So, well, we got to get more conversation about the climate change. I want to talk a little bit about something happening locally here that I got some. Maybe there's something to this whole thing and so on. But we'll talk about that later. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again.